post-draft Motown Megacast. I am one of your three hosts. With me, Paul and Ryan. I know school is over for Ryan. Are you done too, Paul?
Yeah, just finished. I just finished my last assignment last night.
Let's go. It's been a long year, or a long semester with all just doing it online, and I think I speak for all of us when I say I think we're glad we can just focus on sports, even though the only sports we have to focus on now are the Pistons for 4 games and the Tigers, and I think I'd rather watch paint dry than watch the Tigers at this point. So.
That's why we distract ourselves by talking about the Lions.
Precisely. All right, so we've got a lot to talk to. Pretty exciting draft. First, I just kind of want to talk about the philosophy of the draft. I think we saw this kind of develop on Twitter, especially after that. I think it was really after the second D tackle was taken with the third-round pick. I think we got a pretty clear-cut analysis of what kind of philosophy this was going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, they definitely, Brad Holmes wasn't drafting for needs. He was kind of, like, actually starting here at, square one, where you don't draft for needs if your needs extend across the entire roster. So, at that point, he just took his favorite guys, guys that would fit his scheme, fit what he was looking for, like, character-wise, and... Yeah, Brad Holmes just got a bunch of his guys. I think that was
yep.
At the end of the day.
Yeah, it's a combination of getting his guys, and I think along with that, obviously, is the best player available. Because there was a lot of debate about that kind of going into the draft. Was like, and especially once we got past like the second round pick, was that D tackle, and we're like, man, we have a lot of more needs. Like we have warm bodies at the D tackle position. Like it's not necessarily a position of strength for the Lions, but there are warm bodies there, and that's more than we can say about the linebacking position and the and basically the entire backfield. But like you said, he really just focused on getting genuinely what he thought to be the best player, and a lot of times that also happened to be the most athletic player on the field. And then you look at that, like even watching the tape afterwards, especially on Twitter, like right after it happened, just looking through and watching highlights, they all had the athletic streak going through them. Of course, they're NFL athletes. You're going to expect them to be quite athletic, but I don't know. A lot of them just had that different, that kind of intangible, almost next level. I don't know, especially the first, 3 picks.
Yeah, it was clearly obvious that Holmes is going for size, and he's not trying to win the Super Bowl this year at all. Because if he was trying to win the Super Bowl, he would have done what Patricia and Quinn did, draft team needs, but also draft the wrong player and coach him horribly.
I think I like the little addition at the end there. I know what you're saying though. I agree. Like this showed, and honestly, this is what kind of won the draft for me. Was just that he knows this is going to be a long rebuild. Because you heard, I was a little worried. Sheila Ford was talking about early last season that she thinks this roster can still win a playoff game. They're talking. Quinn Trisha had her convinced that they could actually pull off a decent run in the playoffs with that roster, and there's just no world in which that could have happened. I mean, you put even like a Mike Tomlin or one of those coaches with just a storied background and just can bring it together a locker room. I don't think even they would be able to turn that roster around. So it's good to know that this organization is finally shifting towards, okay, we know this is going to be a deep rebuild. It's not something we can, like you were saying, pick for need right away. And we saw that a lot with Quinn Trisha. We saw that way too often, especially for schemes. It's almost like sometimes they weren't drafting for even positional fit. It was scheme fits. It was so specific.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to get into the prospects in a sec, but Onwuzurike was like a defensive, or like he was like a nose tackle in college, but that's just because that's how Washington ran their defense. Like, he's not going to be playing nose tackle at the next level, so they're just drafting him for kind of how they see his skill set slotting into one of their, schematic fits.
Yeah. All right, so it's been talked about to death. I think we hit it on the nail there. It's just the philosophy was best available on the board, not according to the big boards. specifically according to Holmes. I think that's also important to mention because there were times where, at least I think it's a little bit hard to say because people like Mel Kiper kind of take positional value into account when making their lists, so they're not necessarily going to actually put the best player next. But and that's why like you see someone like a defensive tackle, maybe not quite as high as others, even though positionally he's better.
Right.
So he just picked his guys. So let's talk a little bit about the moves around the league. Let's talk about the Bears first. I think Ryan, you can kick us off here because I think you were the most disappointed out of the three of us.
Yeah, so as we all saw, when we were sitting at pick 7, Penei Sewell and Justin Fields were both there. And, we obviously went with Sewell. And then, on Justin Fields went all the way to pick 11 when the Bears traded up and nabbed him to get their future franchise quarterback. And I don't know, I've sat on this a little bit, and I feel a little bit better now about it because, I was kind of telling myself, like, there's a reason that Broncos, who need a quarterback, didn't pick him. Like, there must be a reason for that. And, there's a reason that no teams tried aggressively to trade up higher than 11. So.
Yeah, and we saw that with JOK. That was an example because I think every Lions fan was like screaming at the TV for them to try and get JOK like in the second and the third round. But like sometimes there's just things we don't know. And I think you're right. The fact that he was passed on at number 9 and no one after he picked that, no one tried to aggressively trade up specifically for it. Was just weird. It's just odd.
And despite what Paul might tell you, Teddy Bridgewater isn't the answer at quarterback.
No.
For the Broncos.
No.
I thought it was a very odd thing for the Bears to do, especially trading up, because I thought they just gave up too much, and they're already kind of deep at quarterback. It's not great talent, but Nick Foles and Andy Dalton aren't bad QBs. I just thought it was a horrible move by Chicago. I know I'm in a minority, though.
Depth is not an argument you can make for a quarterback. That's not a good thing. If you have depth and only depth and no talent, that's something that is valuable at the defensive tackle position or the back. It is not something that is valuable in quarterback. There are instances, obviously, where backups come into handy. I'm not going to argue that. But if all you can say about your quarterback room is that it's deep, there is a problem. And that's why Justin Fields was a great pick for the Bears. And I think Ryan feels the same way.
Yeah, I think as much as I hate to admit it, and, we'll see. There's obviously, like we talked about, a reason that he was passed on a few times, but...
Bold prediction, Andy Dalton will be starting in the wild card round for the Chicago Bears, not Justin Fields.
Can I tell you something? That is the worst thing I've ever heard. It's wrong on so many accounts. I don't even know where to start. I think you could argue that Andy Dalton is going to start the season. But if you think the Bears make it to the wild card on the back of Andy Dalton, I'll be sick. I will genuinely be sick right in this room right now. I'll start throwing up. If he couldn't do it with the Cowboys offensive line, and I know the Cowboys defense was garbage, but he had some weapons there and he still was so mediocre. If you think he can put it together with this Bears offensive line with their quote-unquote weapons, you might genuinely be deranged. And you might just be trying to convince yourself that Justin Fields is garbage to make yourself feel better. Because Justin Fields is good. He might be a bust. I will not argue that. But the Bears needed to do this. This wasn't like trading up to get Mitchell Trubisky. That was a different scenario. Mitchell Trubisky is not the same quarterback that Justin Fields was. Mitchell Trubisky, hindsight is 20/20, but even back then, I think most of the NFL world was confused because Mitch Trubisky has such a low ceiling. Like, even at his best, he has a low ceiling. He is not a super athletic guy like Justin Fields. He can't move around like Justin Fields. He might have better accuracy than Justin Fields. He's not the quarterback that Justin Fields is.
He has better accuracy than Justin Fields.
That's fair. At the NFL level, I guess that was one of the things we were looking at in the draft, but once it made it to the NFL...
That's true, yeah.
I'll say I don't think Mitch Trubisky is better than Justin Fields, so I'm not going to go that far at all.
Okay, thank God. I still think you're very wrong in your opinion that... because two things need to be true for Andy Dalton to be starting the wild card, and that's that Andy Dalton is still the starter past Week 17, and they made a wild card spot. So there are a couple things that I don't love about that, because again, I think if the Bears make it to the playoffs, it'll be off the bat, not necessarily off the backs of Justin Fields, but it'll take a good rookie year by Justin Fields. It's not going to be a rebound year from Andy Dalton. So I think you got our takes there pretty good. Paul's not a fan of the Justin Fields pick, and I think there is something to be said about what the Bears gave up. A first round pick is never something you want to. Obviously, that's not something you want to part with. Those are hard to get, and he gave them away like that. You have to be really confident you got your guy. So the Bears definitely took a risk, but this is a franchise that needs a risk. They've been so close to being decent for so long. It's been the quarterback position that's been the difference maker. Their defense has been championship worthy, truly, for probably the past 3-4 years. With Khalil Mack on the defensive line and just how solid it is. And Matt Nagy gets a lot of hate, but he's a decent coach. Coaching is decent. Ownership's kind of garbage. The defense is great. Weapons are kind of leaving, but, it's not a horrible offense. What you need is a quarterback, and the Bears saw that, and they're not going to rely on Mitchell Trubisky and their deep quarterback room, with air quotes. They went out and got their guy. So I love the move. As a Lions fan, that pains me. It hurts me because I hate the Bears so much. And they're just the worst.
Yeah, and then they followed it up with an almost equally as good pick with grabbing Tevin Jenkins in the second round.
God, I forgot about that.
Yeah, so they, beyond that, they didn't pick before round 5, so they probably weren't getting a bunch of impact players necessarily, but those first 2 picks, I think they really nailed it. Yeah, I think that's a successful draft for them, just based on and who knows about some of these other guys they drafted.
Yeah, the fact that they only had 2 above the. You said they didn't have a pick after or in the 3rd, 4th, then, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the top 2 is really what matters in any draft, anyway. So I love the draft they had, and again, it annoys me, but I love it. And then we go over to the Vikings. The Vikings also had a solid draft. Let me pull up exactly who they had.
First of all, they rightfully grabbed Christian Darrisaw when he fell down to 22? Is that where they were?
I believe. Let me pull it up right here.
But yeah, that was
20.
Just an awesome pick.
Man, 23rd. Yeah, Christian Darrisaw at 23rd. That's
when somebody like that falls that far. That was a good pick. So.
And then they got I don't know how I feel about it, but getting Kellen Mond, that was kind of interesting, right? That's kind of interesting. He was kind of one of the quarterback prospects, other than the top 5, who people were kind of talking about a little bit more. They got a decent linebacker. They got Chaz Surratt. Or Surratt, that was kind of exciting.
Yeah, he was one of the guys that I wanted.
Yep. And then they got the guard out of Ohio State. So they got some guys. I actually,
they got some guys that are gonna compete. They're gonna play right away.
Yep, and they're 3rd round. There's not a 3rd round draft pick I don't like for them.
Patrick Jones was a really good pick, I think. There.
How the Vikings don't compete more is baffling to me, because their rosters are consistently good. I know Kirk Cousins isn't great or anything, but they usually have a good receiving core. They have a very good running back core with Madison and Delvin Cook. They have Kyle Rudolph, I believe, still, right?
He's not a running back.
No, a tight end.
Oh. No, I think he went to New York, actually.
Oh. No.
Anyways.
Too bad. And they have a good receiving core. They just can't get it done. It's baffling to me, but now we'll see. I think this is going to be a very competitive North for 3 teams.
How interesting would it be if Kellen Mond just kind of out of nowhere just took the quarterback spot right out of Kirk Cousins' hands?
I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't think it's going to happen either.
I don't think it's impossible. I think there is a path for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially since, I don't know, you've seen a lot. It might just be NFL Twitter kind of freaking out, but you have seen kind of a little bit of a split between Kirk Cousins and his receiving team. Like, there have been times where Kyle Rudolph kind of gets in his face for, missing a wide. There are times where stuff like that happens. So, Kellen Mond hypothetically comes in and has good chemistry with the rest of the team. That's where, if you're Kirk Cousins, you start to get scared of your starting job. Is where a guy comes in, develops chemistry with a decent receiving core. That, that's dangerous. But, yeah, the Vikings, I hate giving drafts grades at this point. I think that's so unreasonable every time. But I'd say that's at least a solid B. Like, if we're being arbitrary, I think that's a solid draft. And
yeah, I think they got some good value in the later rounds as well.
Yep. All right, and then let's move on to the Packers. Now, the biggest story of draft night for the Packers, it was not the draft for these guys. It was the news that mysteriously was reported at the same time by the largest NFL insiders, just within 5 minutes of each other, that he wants out of Green Bay. Every other team in the NFC North started celebrating, I think, once they heard that news. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has consistently been the best quarterback in the NFC North, with Matthew Stafford, I don't want to say a distant second because I think that's disrespectful to his talent level, but pretty solidly in second. Aaron Rodgers has ran this division for almost as long as he's been here. And I don't know what the Packers are doing to Rodgers. I don't know, I don't like the whole crybaby narrative with him. Because trust me, if there's an opportunity, a reasonable opportunity to call him a crybaby, I will jump on it. Because I do not like Aaron Rodgers. But I don't... The organization has been kind of crappy to him. They're basically saying, we don't want you next year. We're kind of open about it. We refuse to restructure your deal. Mm-hmm. We're going to draft your replacement last year. I mean, the whole Jordan Love thing, I think that's a big part of this whole...
Oh, yeah.
The fission that's
created.
No,
this is definitely... I think this is definitely like a accumulation of events that have happened. Like, the end of the season last year when he said, like... I forget exactly what he said. It was like, who knows what my future holds or something. Like... I mean, that was all kind of... I mean, you look back now and like, oh, it's so obvious, but definitely those were some of the writing on the wall, I suppose.
Yeah, and the fact that they traded up to get Jordan Love, it's not that a great quarterback fell to them. They just straight up traded up to get this guy.
Yeah.
And quarterback's not a need. The Packers are a team that can win a championship now. And they're acting like they're trying to win a championship 7 years from now. Their time to do it is right now. They're not rebuilding, and they're acting like it. And that's why Rodgers wants to leave.
Yeah, that's precisely it. This is a roster that can win a Super Bowl right now. Right now it can. It could have last year. Maybe a field goal decision gets changed up a bit, and they're in the Super Bowl. This is not the time to be hoping about the future. Look at the Buccaneers. Obviously it's Tom Brady, but they took a leap and they put all the chips into the next 2 years. Mm-hmm. It paid off once, and it might pay off again.
I mean, they've returned literally
nearly everyone
starters, I think.
Insane.
And
it's
insane. That just kind of, I mean, they didn't have a lot of draft capital, but they were literally just drafting kind of like plugging holes with high upside players.
It's going to be such an unbeatable team next year. Yeah. Like, they have the kind of thing, like, they may not have the flashiness that like a Kansas City does. They may not have the playmakers, but my God, I struggle to find a hole in this team anywhere. This is an insane team. It's so well built. And then you have the Packers, who, Packers are a very good roster, and they have one of the best quarterbacks in the league in Aaron Rodgers. And they just refuse to dedicate any sort of capital, any future. They try and play it safe. And that's why Aaron Rodgers only has one Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers should have more Super Bowls. He is a talented enough quarterback to have more than that. And the fact that he only has one is a stain on this organization. And it's such a joke that they're treating... I don't like holding organizations to, you have to treat this guy right. But come on, this guy's a Super Bowl for you. He's been your guy. And he's not a Green Bay type guy. He's a Hollywood guy. He's San Francisco. He likes it not. But he's been your quarterback. He's willing to stay in this cold, crappy town for 10 years. And this is what you're doing to him all of a sudden. You're going to kick him out for a mediocre quarterback prospect out of Utah State. That's what you're going with here? It's just, as a Lions fan, I love it. If I was a Packers fan, my ears would be turning red right now. I'd be so mad. They're treating this like a joke.
Yeah, Rodgers should have 4 Super Bowl victories by now. This is absurd. The fact that they're incapable of going back to the Super Bowl at least every 3 years under this guy is insane to me. And they don't try to. And going back to like the Tampa Bay thing, I could see this as Brady's year to try to redeem that Super Bowl loss that he had against the Giants in 08 that ruined his perfect season. Because now this could be Brady's chance. Can't go 19-0, but he can go 20-0 and have perfection.
It's beautiful, Paul. I mean, I'm as bullish or not. I am the opposite of bullish. I will never ever say a team's going to go undefeated. But man, if there's a roster to do it for the first time since those Pats, this is looking like the team. It's like Ryan said, they were literally just drafting for need. They did not care about the future. They were just drafting starters who could fill depth. It's just insane. But yeah, the Packers are a joke. We didn't even talk about the draft picks, but I think that shows you about the state of the organization.
Yeah, I was actually kind of surprised that they ended up going Eric Stokes in the first round.
Yeah. I felt like there were better corners on the board, and I like Stokes a lot.
Yeah, I mean, he was like the one that I wanted at 41. If he was available.
Yeah. And so they reached a bit for the corner.
I think based on the state of their roster, aside from the murky quarterback situation we just talked about, I think their roster makeup kind of warrants a potential reach like that on a guy with high upside.
That's fair.
This dude is just athletically just gifted. He runs like a sub 4.3. I think he's a big, tall cornerback.
You know, what they have to do is help out Rodgers and Devontae Adams. Get Devontae another weapon out there, like the Steelers did. Well, in the later rounds,
round 3.
But get him a serious weapon, like the Steelers had with Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster. Devontae would play Antonio's part, and their wide receiver 2 would actually come up with more receptions, and Rodgers would be able to eat that up. Thinking Roethlisberger can do it, Rodgers would absolutely dominate it.
I mean, so like Ryan said, I don't think third round's too far, and I don't think the best argument in defending Rodgers is that he hasn't had weapons. I don't think that's the best. I mean, he's had a good offensive line, the entire time he's been at Green Bay?
Yeah, and Aaron Jones with, current Lion, Jamal Williams backing him up. That was a crazy combo out of the backfield. And then, I mean, they had Jared Cook for, I don't really remember how long ago that was, but
yeah, I don't think
their share of weapons. Maybe not necessarily the most elite core or like receiving core or anything, but I mean, they've had talent.
They've had a good amount of talent. So I don't know if that's the best argument. I do get what you're saying. I think that's more applicable to last year's draft though, where they refused to. I mean, because think about if they had like an extra level weapon this year, how things could have changed. If they would have drafted someone besides Jordan Love. I mean, there were so many opportunities. So I think this year it's a little more forgivable. But man, I'm starting to get the point where I don't even know if Rodgers is coming back. It's
yeah. I mean, did you see the reports where like in like some team group chats or something he was referring to their GM as Jerry Krause?
Oh my god. Oh god. That's it's time for them to rip the Band-Aid off for me. Try and get some value from him if you're gonna. He doesn't want to play with you. Yeah, he hates your organization.
It's situations like this where I'm so thankful that Holmes was able to just, like an amicable breakup with Matthew Stafford. Get something out of it. Versus now they're just, who knows what's gonna happen.
Yep. Yeah, and it sucks, because it feels like you can't properly... It sounds cheesy, but it feels like you can't properly say goodbye if you're a fan. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. This guy's been your quarterback. He has a Super Bowl for you. He's been with you for years. And now you just kind of have to say goodbye in this awkward way where he hates your organization. He hates it. He may like the fan. He hates your organization.
And I know a lot of teams called the Packers this winter to talk about Rodgers. I don't think anybody actually gave them a straight up offer because the Packers refused to talk about Rodgers. But the Rams called the Packers to talk about Rodgers. We saw what the Rams gave up for Stafford. I can't imagine what they would have given up for Rodgers. They probably could have thrown Aaron Donald into that deal.
No.
I just don't.
No. No. But I do get you were saying it, like, if they would have gone for that. But to me, that's like a moot point. You got to call about Aaron Rodgers. I don't know if they were super serious about that. I don't know if they'd be willing to part with current assets. I think they're willing to part with trade assets. I don't think they're willing to trade current assets.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where, like, we heard the report when the Lions were initially looking to trade with the Rams for Stafford. The Lions asked for Donald, and you might as well just test the waters. Like,
yeah.
I mean, what would it take for this person? Like, nothing hurt,
that.
No harm, no foul.
I love that. He just comes in and is just like, hey, maybe give you your best player. I don't know. So yeah, that's the moves around the league. The big news, really, Vikings and Bears. Unless you ask Paul, had a good draft. I think both of them. The Vikings were just well-rounded. Bears went out and got their guy. And the Packers are just kind of confusing. The most stable organization in the NFC North finally looks destabilized. That's great to hear. I love it. So let's get into the actual picks then. Let's get into the Lions. That's what we're here for. The Lions. A fantastic draft. We've already talked about it a little bit. About the philosophy, best man available. And if we're going to talk about the best player available, we have to talk about Sewell first. We have to talk about Sewell.
Do you want to, before we start, just really quickly go through each pick?
Yes. Yeah, good idea. Let's see. So, first, at number 7, we had Penei Sewell. Left tackle out of Oregon. He was 20 at the time. Or he's 20 currently. Started as a 17-year-old. I mean,
second youngest player in the draft.
Yeah. One of the best left tackle prospects like in a while. We'll get into that later though. Next was the defensive tackle out of Washington. Oh, Levi. You want to say the last name for me?
Onwuzurike.
I got it before the podcast. I just got worried. Onwuzurike. Levi Onwuzurike. Another solid pickup, and this is where we talked about it a little bit. We were confused at first. The third round draft pick for the Lions was Liam McNeil, another defensive tackle. Again, I'm going to pass the mic over to Ryan so he can pronounce the cornerback's name. That was the fourth round draft pick.
He was at the end of the third, Afatu Melifonwu.
Oh, that's
right. They're the supplemental draft pick that they got from the Rams.
Yeah, corner. Afatu.
Yeah.
Melifonwu.
The last name is pretty much just how it looks, but yeah. I heard
Melifonwu. Okay. And then another just great name, Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver out of USC. Then going down, linebacker Derek Barnes, running back Jamar Jefferson.
Yeah, and Derek Barnes was acquired via a trade-up.
Oh, that's right. So they saw the guy they wanted.
Yeah, so they ended up trading their fourth-round pick, their fifth-round pick, and then also and then what was it, next year's fourth-round pick?
Yeah, it was next year's.
And then we got the seventh-round pick. That turned into Jamar Jefferson.
Yeah, so linebacker has been a position of need for the Lions. Like, that's all we've talked about the offseason. There was even some talk, we would have not liked it, but there's some talk of a linebacker early in the first for the Lions, which would have been, that would have been.
So glad he went to the Cowboys.
Oh, such a move of the old regime to do that kind of thing. Just pick a linebacker because he's quick and because he fits your scheme. Just the most Quinn Trisha thing.
No, if it was Quinn Trisha, they would have picked a linebacker who runs a 4.9.
Oh, you're right. What am I talking about? He's way too fast for them. Never mind. He's great in coverage, and
you're right though. It did kind of feel like the kind of thing the old regime would do. Just like, I don't know. It just makes sense.
Oh God, I don't think I've ever hated a regime as much as them. Like even with the Tigers right now, the Mike Ilitch, what's his face combo is still
Avila.
Avila combo is they may be worse, but it's still to me not as hateful. All right, so let's just talk first about Mr. Penei Sewell. So I kind of watched a little bit of tape of him specifically. I'll talk a little bit about that. And after I'm done with that, what we can do is just kind of talk about him, because I'm sure, specifically Ryan, I know Ryan kind of has his ear to the ground about this kind of stuff. I'm sure he has some fun facts and just knows a little bit about him. So I'll kind of go with the tangible stuff here first. So like we said, 20 years old. He came in and just stole a starting job when he was 17. Just insane. And the Oregon Ducks are known for their offensive lines recently. They've had great offensive lines the past 5 years.
Well, I don't know if you heard this anecdote, but I think it was Shane Lemieux who got drafted last year, I think. He was on that offensive line when Penei Sewell got there. And, this guy's about to get drafted, really good offensive lineman. And he goes up to the line coach, I think, or the head coach or whoever, and he says, we need this kid starting. This true freshman, he needs to start.
Just insane, dude.
Yeah, a very highly just esteemed offensive line. Just, it tells you all you need to know about how much success he's had in the past. And, hopefully we'll just see that trend continue.
Yep. So, yeah, he came in at Oregon, showed it off. And let me read you a couple reasons why. These were his pro day stats, so it's not as reputable as the combine. But he ran a 5.09 second 40-yard dash for, it's pretty decent for a big boy.
He's 330 pounds. He is a large human.
109-inch broad jump, 28-inch vertical, and he ran a 7.8 on the 3-cone drill. So, I mean, just when you consider his size, those are all pretty decent numbers. Those are all pretty solid numbers. And that's really the tape with Penei Sewell is just raw talent. You turn on a tape of him, he just dominates plays. When he doesn't just want to block people, he wants to dominate the play. You'll see highlights where he will just run someone over. He will complete the play. If he's got a hold of the defensive end or the defensive tackle, he will just run him to the ground if he can. It's not about just momentary protection. It's not about saving yourself for now. He's just a savage, and he's so fast. I think that's the thing that popped out to me most on the tape, because when you watch a lot of line tape, especially offensive line tape, obviously, a lot of it is just kind of decent pass protection and solid pancakes. Half of these dudes' highlights were running down the field to help plays. There would be a halfback screen. They'd screen him and he would just run over and run down a linebacker. He'd catch up to a linebacker and just run him down. This is one of the best, as a kind of a rookie to tape, but one of the best tapes I've seen of just a guy who can run down field and just blow people up. He's so fast.
Yeah, and, usually when you're watching or scouting offensive line film, you kind of don't really want to be noticing them. You want them to be just holding their own and not whiffing on blocks, just kind of something that you don't notice as much necessarily when watching a play develop. But with Sewell, it's I don't know, he's kind of a playmaker at that position, which I think that's the best way to describe him is you can you'll be able to see his impact based on the holes he'll be able to create, or just the movement and depth he'll be able to get when blocking. He's gonna be a fun watch for sure. As far as
hard
offensive
to
linemen go.
Precisely, it's hard to say an offensive lineman's gonna be a fun watch. But with this guy, just go watch his tape. It really is. It's fun to just watch him run down the field as a 330-pound guy. A huge man, a hulking man just running down the field and blowing up a linebacker, just blowing up defensive backs even. It's so fun to watch. He's so fast. And because of that speed, he is an amazing zone run blocker. If you watch the zone runs, he's good, not necessarily because he has good fundamentals. He just gets there so quick and knows where to position himself. So a run will get set up, and zone run, obviously, you need as an offensive lineman, you kind of need to adjust. You need to read the zone. He just goes there immediately. And even if he wasn't that strong, the fact that he's so fast and knows exactly where he's supposed to go, he can just sit there and immediately set up a good run. immediately. Like with a left tackle like that, you can almost guarantee at least like 3 yards if you run to that side every time. He just knows where to go. So I think running is kind of his specialty, especially those zone runs and then those outside kind of to the left, to the right.
Oh yeah.
Just running down the field and blocking.
Yeah.
He's a good pass protector though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he did maybe allow 1 sack or no sacks throughout college.
Let me pull it up. Let me pull it up while Paul is talking. He wanted to say.
Yeah, I really hope that this opens more opportunity for Jared Goff to pass to Hawkinson on the line. And not only that, but open up the opportunity for, say, Jamal Williams to make some catches in the backfield, or DeAndre Swift. So many opportunities there on the offensive line. They just re-signed their center to go along with that. Mm-hmm. He's the highest paid center now in the entire NFL. And this regime really cares about their offensive line. I know they didn't draft many offensive line, only one in the draft, but it's a high priority for them. And you give Goff a good offensive line, he can play with it.
Wow, and I'm looking right now at the stat. He had 678 career pass blocking snaps. So 678 snaps in which he was involved with. Over 2 years, just 1 sack.
That's wild.
That's wild. And the fact that that's not necessarily his strength. If you watch his tape, it's not necessarily...
Yeah, he's more of like a mauler in the run game, kind of.
Yeah, he's the guy who'll get downfield.
But I think that's part of the beauty, is that kind of just goes to show how well-rounded this guy can be. And, just his through-the-roof ceiling, especially the fact that he's still 20 years old. You could get 10 years from now, he's going to be 30. Like, that's a pretty... I mean, maybe a little bit past a normal offensive lineman's prime, or maybe right in their prime. And, 10 years of production out of anybody is like...
And good production, too.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this, he just... And that's the name of... Or that's what it is with Penei Sewell. It's so much raw talent. He just has so much... Positionally, it's kind of hard to say, like, he has more raw talent than someone like Jamar Chase, or like Jamar Chase, someone like that, someone who's explosive and you can, it's
more
tangible.
Of a tangible effect.
Yep, a more tangible effect on the score of the game. It just is more exciting to watch. But this guy is explosive for an offensive lineman. He's so fast, and he fits that perfect scheme that Holmes drafted for. Just that character guy who's all about family. He's all about just dominating. He wants to destroy everything in his path, and I love it. Let's lead into a little bit of my concerns that I got from watching tape, and let me set a disclaimer here. The concerns, quote unquote, will be nitpicks, because there's not a lot to nitpick with this guy. He gave up 1 sack in 2 years at in a Power 5 school. It's nothing to scoff at. But first, a concern that I saw a lot was arm length.
Yeah.
33 1/4 inches. It's for that position you want length.
I think what kind of puts me at ease a little bit is, you want arm length so you can kind of make up maybe for some speed or some, catch somebody out in front. But I just think Penei Sewell is just not going to have an issue, getting to his spots and where he needs to block. So that's why I'm kind of I don't think he necessarily needs that cushion, I guess,
because he gets there so quick.
Yeah. I think his athletic profile just kind of will overcome that, or more than make up for that deficiency.
Yeah. And another deficiency that I saw while watching. 2 things that kind of go together. No, I guess not. First, technique needs a little bit of work. But this is to be expected for a 20-year-old. I mean, it just makes sense. But a lot of times he just over-relied on his raw talent because he's been so much stronger than everyone for so long that he has that ability to, maybe he doesn't give 100% to a play or doesn't get in a position, but he'll just destroy someone anyways because of how strong and quick he is. So a lot of times you see in the tape where you have a really talented defensive end kind of get around him. and the Pac-12 is not necessarily known for pass rushers. So I think that's going to be a bit of an adjustment. The thing is, like you said, his athletic profile is so strong that I have no worry about him just developing some techniques.
Right. And I think just based on his kind of his character, his demeanor, like he certainly seems like a guy that will just I think he'll be able to pick it up pretty quickly, and he'll have, really or just good mentors on the line, and like Taylor Decker, Frank Ragnow.
Yeah, the
and
good
then
mentors.
Him and Jonah Jackson can kind of grow together, I guess. And I think, I think this really has the makings of what could be a special offensive line.
Yeah. I mean, the building blocks are there. Like you said, a lot of these guys will be here for at least 5+ years. Like even Penei Sewell, if he's good, you can project him up to 10 years.
Oh yeah, like 5 guaranteed.
Yep. So another, I'm gonna read this to you guys. I don't understand it. In his draft profile, there was some anonymous scout, like what scouts said after meeting him, and a scout from the NFC North says work ethic needs to be worked on, and is a little immature.
I mean, I have no real reason to believe that that's entirely true.
I don't think we've seen anything from work ethic. See, and this is my theory with it. I think he's taking it because my biggest flaw with him, honestly, was consistency. Especially in pass protection. I know on the table he only gave up one sack, but a lot of times he allowed pressures because he wouldn't necessarily finish. Like he wouldn't do that thing that we can see him do where he just uses his strength to overpower someone. There were some where he slacked a bit, and I think that just has to do with technique. I don't think that has anything to do with work ethic, especially his family moved from America Samoa, to specifically to be in the NFL. Like this is a pretty big deal, so I'm not a scout, but I think don't worry about that. Don't worry about that nitpick that his work ethic needs to be worked on. No, I just don't see that.
And one kind of quick final criticism that I've seen is, just him switching positions from left tackle to right tackle.
Yep.
But he played right tackle in high school, and I think when you have that kind of skill set and that kind of athletic profile,
when you're drafted based on athletic profile and not like technical proficiency, it's easier to make that.
Yeah,
kind of
and there are already tools there, obviously. Like he's not some guy who just is an athletic freak and hopped on the field for the first time. Like he has good technique, and that's part of his upside. But there's definitely room to work, and I'm really excited to see what this current regime can kind of get out of him.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're not going to move him from one side of the line to the other if he's just not comfortable. They'll figure it out. So I'm not really worried about that. He'll play regardless.
Yeah, so that's Penei Sewell in a nutshell. Insane raw talent. Maybe needs to adjust his game to the NFL a bit, but I don't think that's a problem.
Yeah, I have no concerns with this guy.
I have no concerns.
I think it's going to be just I think it's going to
he
be
has almost no bust
transition that we'll see in this rookie class. I mean, it might be maybe not a hot take, maybe a little bit bold, but I mean, I could definitely see a world in which he's just the best production-wise in the first round,
Yep, yeah. He's just... There's almost no bust potential here with this pick. So the second round pick, one that kind of shocked us with people like JOK on the board projected in the first round with, some guys that we were both very fond of, some receivers. But, I honestly didn't know much about him before, but after they picked him, after I watched a little bit of tape, this guy's exciting. He's an exciting prospect, and very similarly to Penei Sewell, dude has raw talent in spades. Levi Onwuzurike. Oh my God, Onwuzurike. Why am I not saying this right?
Onwuzurike. That's how I've heard it pronounced.
Onwuzurike. That's what it is. I have it spelled wrong here. I did it with a W instead of a Z. Okay, Onwuzurike makes way more sense. Levi Onwuzurike. He's 6'3". He's 290. The 290 part is somewhat of a concern. I've seen.
So I guess it really depends on where they envision him, because if he's kind of playing the like Trey Flowers role where he's almost more of like a big defensive end or like interior pass rusher, then I think his size is pretty apt for that.
That's fair.
So it depends on if they see him as more of, one of those guys or one of the more interior guys.
I think you and I are in agreement that he's not going to be used as a nose tackle in this defense.
No,
though. That was such an odd choice in Washington. And Washington is, I mean, it's not an organization you can scoff at. Washington, UW, what were you doing? It's just interesting.
I think it just has to do with kind of, just how they've always ran their defense. Like, they don't really have the traditional expectations of a nose tackle. Like, he's not there to eat up blocks and stop the run necessarily. Like, he might be more of an athletic guy that's supposed to pass rush. So I think he kind of already has some of that pass rush background.
Yeah, yep. And so the name of the game with this prospect here is QB pressure. Lots of his tape, if you watch his tape, he's just a disruptive player. He's a bit of a project with some things, but like if you watch his highlights, wow, he can just use his speed and strength, especially considering his size, to just break into the backfield. And he's fast in pursuit too. That's the thing, is like he can chase down those guys. He can chase down the Aaron Rodgers, and he can chase down those quick guys who usually have a bit of escapability. He can shut them down. He pursues well. And he just shows flashes of brilliance. I think that's the best way to put it with this guy. Is he shows flashes where you see him and it's just, you're like, that's a first round talent right there. That is a first round talent doing that. His biggest asset probably is his speed. His speed and the strength for his size just sneaks into the backfield, gets pressure. In terms of criticism with him, he wasn't very productive. And again, though, we've already talked about this. That might have been more had to do with kind of the mishandling. He wasn't necessarily lined up in the way that would have been the most productive for him. He's used as a nose tackle. He's more that kind of, like you said, Ryan, that big pass rusher, maybe interior defensive line who likes to get after the QB.
Yeah, and I like this guy. I thought it was a strange pick, especially with JOK on the board, but the D tackle wasn't not a team need. You know, they could have used a D tackle. Another guy out of the Pac-12 that seemed to be a common theme for the Lions in this draft, drafting 4 Pac-12 players. But it keeps the big guy theme going, and he's quick for his size. And Lions need lots of help on defense.
If I'm not mistaken, he ran a sub 5-second 40, I think.
I have it right here. He ran a 4.86.
Yeah, and that's nuts.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think between, and obviously we'll talk about Aleem McNeil in just a second, but I think between those two, they got some guys that they believe will just kind of be able to just cause a lot of havoc with these athletic traits. And I'm really excited to see how this D line kind of develops, and how fun would it be if the Lions had one of the most fun young up and coming D lines.
Yep.
Because we're also waiting to see how Julian Okwara is going to play. Romeo Okwara, we got him to. I think this D line does have some potential that we haven't seen since 2014.
Yeah, and when you draft guys that's what this defensive line was missing as well. It was kind of that explosive athlete, because they were not productive. They couldn't get to the quarterback to the quarterback. But again, that was the Patricia scheme.
Right.
Getting to the quarterback was not a part of the Patricia scheme.
Yeah.
And now that they're kind of changing to realize, in the National Football League, you need to pressure the quarterback. And it's kind of sad that it took an organization that long to realize it. But I'm glad they're finally turning the corner on that. When you get guys like Onwuzurike, it's specifically to get to the QB.
Yeah, and I think guys like Trey Flowers, I really wonder how much more of a future he even has with the team, because like you said, he's kind of geared towards more of that Patricia type defense, where it's kind of like, big, stop the run, and I guess kind of just defend against like not necessarily like doing these crazy stunts or blitz or like having a lot of athleticism. It was kind of like these big bodies to eat up space and
Yep. And that's actually kind of one of the weaknesses of Onwuzurike as well. He's not a run stuffer. I mean, that's fair. That I don't think it's not everyone can do everything well, but he's just not a run stuffer. He can't control gaps, especially if it's if he's double teamed, he's done. That was one of the problems for sure. But again, he's drafted as pass rusher. He's not going to be put in these 3rd and 2 stuff the run scenarios. He's going to be put on the field when you need to pressure the quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Right, and who knows? Maybe he can kind of add it to his repertoire some more, even if not necessarily like plus run defense, then maybe he can become just a league average or maybe a little bit above.
And he has the strength to do it. That's the thing. He has the strength and the athletic profile to become average or even a little above average as a run stuffer. It's just currently like I couldn't tell. It was kind of hard to tell in the tape because it happened so often, but he just couldn't control the gaps. He couldn't fight through those double teams. And it's unfair to ask a player to fight through double teams. I understand that. But you got to expect at least a couple of times where you at least give a little bit of a fight. And it just seemed like he gave up when he got double teamed. But again, the most important thing for here is he's a pass rusher. He's an athletic guy. He's fast. And like you said, Ryan, I think there is a very reasonable case where he becomes a league average pass protector. Or excuse me, run protector. Good Lord. And another weird scout comment I found that I just found funny. He has really skinny ankles. Although he said balance didn't seem to be a problem. So skinny ankles, balance isn't a problem. So that's Onwuzurike, pass rusher. Has a little bit of flaws. And he can improve it though. And I love this pick. Again, another pick I love. Like you said, Paul, when we were first watching this, I was a little annoyed. Defensive tackle was not one of like the needs we needed. That was not something we necessarily needed. But watching the tape, kind of taking a step back and realizing that this isn't Patricia, we're not drafting to win this year, I love the pick.
Yeah, I think it took me one day to convince myself that all the picks were the exact right picks that we could have made.
Twitter doesn't help.
Yeah.
It really doesn't.
Yeah. I think I agree, and I think my biggest thing was, even more so than JOK, I wanted Trayvon Merrick there.
Yeah.
I thought that, I don't know, I kind of just felt like that would be ideal, and that might be my one kind of gripe with, just specifically in that instance where I think they could have gone with more of a, I don't know, gotten more value maybe. And I guess that's kind of, again, that's unfair to say, and it's kind of pointless to like give draft grades post draft, but I just thought that Merrick was a playmaker, and I really thought he could have stepped right in and become kind of like one of the mainstays in that defensive backfield.
Yeah, been that player. So anything else to add with that, Paul? All right, so let's move on to the next defensive tackle taken, which was right after that, the 3rd round draft pick, Aleem McNeil. You want to talk about it a bit, Ryan?
Yeah, so Aleem McNeil is a nose tackle from NC State. And he's kind of got a squat, short body frame at just under 6'2", but almost 320 pounds. But he's, like we were talking about with Onwuzurike, he's one of these guys that just has a very intriguing, promising athletic profile. He's in high school, I'm sure everybody's heard this a bunch of times, but he played baseball. He was an outfielder. He was a running back and a linebacker at like 250 plus. And when he came to NC State, they just had him bulk up. They wanted him kind of as more of an interior guy. So, I mean, he never, like, he always had that athleticism, even when he bulked up. Like, this isn't a guy who's always been as big as an NFL defensive tackle. So that kind of helps him. And even though he's a nose tackle, he will probably be able to. He'll be like a disruptor. He'll be able to move the pocket. He'll be able to push. He'll be able to get pressures, and who knows? Maybe he'll be able to provide some upside and plus pass rushing from the interior. That's something that the Lions haven't had in Lord knows how long. But yeah, I think just between these two guys, I think they really could have a really solid foundation going. And I'm excited to see what they'll be able to do because there's a good chance with Aleem McNeil that he's going to slide right into that starting nose tackle position because his competition right now is John Pennicini. Like he played good for a 6th round rookie, but he's still a 6th round rookie from last year. So yeah, I think he's going to have an opportunity to play a lot right away, and I'm really excited to see what he'll be able to do.
Yeah, Aleem, he's so athletic. He's not necessarily like as quick as some of the other guys we've talked about, but he does possess that disruptive ability. He can break into the backfield, and he showed potential to be kind of that bull rush guy who can kind of blitz in. Even though he's a big guy, he's a pretty big guy, but he still shows that potential to. I mean, with a combination of explosiveness, like that explosiveness he has in athleticism, he has very well the opportunity to be like, I don't know, to start disrupting.
I think this pick showed that Holmes really wanted to fix up that D-line as soon as possible. He saw that as a bigger long-term need than the backfield, at least right now, because going 2 D tackles in a row without hitting the defensive backfield, I think it's still questionable. I wouldn't have done it. I don't hate the player. I think McNeil is going to be fine. I think he's probably going to play his first season. But I probably would have went out with the defensive backfield if I was Holmes.
Well, and I think, we've talked about it, but that's kind of just a testament to what they were doing. Because, I think probably, positional need versus scheme fit, there was such just anybody that fit the scheme and was kind of, considered, one of the best players available. So I think just he wasn't really too worried about, I need a safety, let me go get a safety. It was more like, oh, this guy fell to us, let's take him while we can.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, kind of, Paul. Even though he's drafting best man available, there is something to be said about, what if the guy perfectly fits your position and is talented too. But it shows the dedication to the defensive line. And I think that's a great ideology to have as a head coach is like, hey, we start through the lines. If we don't win in the trenches, it's such a stereotypical thing to say, but honestly, it's so important. If you don't win in the trenches, you just won't win. And that's what he's showing. He's going to come in here and he's going to build a big, strong defensive line, a very athletic offensive line too. Yeah, I love this pick. It took me a second too because 2 defensive tackles right after each other. This high, I was a little annoyed at first, especially when we had linebackers on the we had linebackers available that were pretty good. Mm-hmm. So I get what you're saying, Paul, but in the end, watching tape, getting to know this player a little bit, I just love him. And the fact that he played baseball, that's just so interesting to me. He's an outfielder. It's just crazy. He's an athletic guy, picked up relatively early in the 3rd round. He's projected kind of in the 2nd or 3rd round area by the NFL. But as far as the defensive tackle go, I think that's as solid as you're going to get in the 3rd round.
Yeah, and I think he'll kind of fit like a glove in this scheme, and I just think, as far as what they could have done, I guess in terms of potential for offensive line or defensive line in that aspect, I think they did about as well as you could. So I guess if nothing else, we kind of have that to hold on to is we have that foundation for our defensive line. If all goes well, that group is set,
Yeah, and again, we can't give draft grades right now. And a lot will depend on the success of these two defensive tackles, because that's like 2 years down the line, neither of them are starters. This draft will be considered a failure. It just will. But again, with the amount of athletic power this guy shows, it's hard for me to say that he can't. Okay, and then the next Lions pick here, they actually swung around and they ended up getting another third-round pick, and with it, cornerback out of Syracuse, Ifeanyi Melifonwu. Wait, Ifeatu Melifonwu. I almost got it. God, I almost had it. Another guy who they just got great positional value for. This guy was projected second round, especially if you look at his size and the strength. He is 6'2.5", 205. He's a strong guy, and he has the profile to be a starting safety.
Yeah, and this was one of the guys that I actually had highlighted as potential day 2 picks, like even as high as 41. This was a guy that might have been a little rich for my blood, but yeah, he was a guy that I was kind of excited about, and to get him at 101, I think that was awesome positional value.
Yeah, to have this guy fall, you get a defensive backfield, team need, talented, and he fell to you. Why wouldn't you take him? He has everything that I want. I don't know if he has everything that Brad Holmes wants, but he has everything that I want.
Yeah, he's again. It seems like we've said it with every single one, and that's because it's consistent throughout. Strength and athleticism. He can just. There are times where he can just smother targets, like right off the bat. He can just cover he can cover like anyone in the league, and he has the strength and he has the size to do it. Yeah, he's a tough guy. I love. There's no problem with this pick in the third round, late in the third round. You snag a guy projected in the second round, who could, with this defensive backfield, could very well come in and start pretty quick. Although it's kind of a hard position to jump right into, especially if you're kind of a late round guy. But still, this is a guy with the situation the Lions are in could very well come in and start pretty quickly.
Right. Well, and hopefully he doesn't have to come in and start. Hopefully he'll get the chance to sit behind. They got Quentin Dunbar on a 1-year deal, who, if he works out, maybe could stay, or if he does work out for that 1 year, just kind of groom Melifonwu into maybe take over that position later. Or you also have Okuda and Oruwariye, obviously, and hopefully. I was kind of hoping they would pick up another nickelback, but you have Cornelder there. So you have guys that are already primed to just be ahead of him. And hopefully he'll get the opportunity to just kind of take it slowly and in stride. Sort of not how Okuda was kind of thrust into the flames.
Yeah, and this cornerback room is starting to get pretty good. In terms of ceiling, I guess.
Right,
is a better way to put it.
I think... Yeah, I don't think any of them have performed well enough yet to really
to go out and say this is going to be as good as the offensive line type thing.
But as far as ceiling, this could be a very, very good cornerback room. They got young guys. They got
you
guys.
even hear Jeff Okuda and some of those guys talk about the change they've seen in coaching since this. That would have been helpful last year. It's I'm surprised at how much my dislike grows for that past or the past leadership. Every time I hear a new quote, I'm like, man, they were really god awful, weren't they? And that's actually pretty exciting for Oruwariye too, because he developed relatively well he was picked in third round. Fifth. Mm-hmm. He was picked in the 5th, cornerback out of Penn State, and he's already kind of he showed some promise. That's really exciting. And I think Melifonwu has the ability to come in there and just strengthen the potential of this. This backfield is starting to have a bit of a potential, and that's something we can't have said for the past 2 years. So that's Melifonwu. Let's move on to finally an offensive weapon picked for Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown. What? The sun god himself. You want to tell us a bit about him, Ryan?
Yeah. So they picked up Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver out of USC, with their 4th-round pick. He slipped a little bit. I mean, he was kind of seen as like a 3rd-round receiver, and he'll likely come right in and start in that slot receiver position because they don't really have anybody. They lost Amendola. But St. Brown is almost 6 feet tall, almost 200 pounds. And he doesn't necessarily project as, or he doesn't have a crazy athletic profile. I think his 40 time was actually like a 4.6, which is, I don't know, it's certainly nothing to write home about. It's not a great 40 time, but I think he does kind of play faster than that, and he'll provide one of my favorite comparisons I heard, if not even like play style, just like player role, was Robert Woods in the Rams offense. And if he could be that type of like slot guy, that security blanket over the middle type routes, the same way Robert Woods was, well then that would just be like an absolute home run of a pick. A guy that would be able to get that much contribution and maybe not even in the first year, but if he can fall into a role similar to that, that would just be incredible value for a 4th-round receiver.
Yeah, and that's where you find value in receivers, is like in the slot position, and I think they did it right here. He's like the archetypal slot receiver. He's not necessarily super fast. He's not necessarily super athletic, but he does everything well enough. He runs a decent route, and this is the comparison I've heard 100 times. Golden Tate.
I was gonna say I avoided that comparison for you.
Yes,
because
I've heard it so many times.
It's an interesting comparison, but I don't think it's necessarily accurate.
I think people are just looking at the aggressive yard after catch for it, because he has a hell of a yard after catch. I mean, he can just he's very aggressive. And I think he can really just power into the backfield once he snags that. So I think that's where a lot of the Golden Tate comparisons are.
I think.
But other than that, I agree.
Yeah. So with him, I think he's very, very good at like just using some kind of strategic move to get you like the first tackler. Like he's not gonna. Golden Tate, I think, was a little bit more maybe nimble and like just kind of like strong in the legs. But St. Brown will just. I think he's just got this technical proficiency to his game where he can kind of use like just outsmart you, I guess, on the field, like get away from. I think he'll be very adept at just like breaking the first tackle and getting a few extra yards just consistently.
No, I think that comparison to Robert Woods is pretty accurate. Like he's not the fastest guy, but he's just such a playmaker, and that's what Robert Woods was or is. He just runs jet sweeps once in a while, things like that. Makes weird moves.
Yeah, it just offers a level of dependability, I guess. Where, like, he's... I feel like this phrase is overused, but he can act as, like, a safety blanket,
Yeah.
Just a guy that you can check down to if Jared Goff is in trouble, or just hit him on over-the-middle, slant, and breaking type routes.
Yeah, I think he definitely needs another wide receiver to be out on any scheme he is in, though, because he can't perform as a wide receiver one, I don't think, and basically in the scheme. But
I don't think usually you don't necessarily expect your primary slot receiver to be your number one. Like a lot of times, those guys who are playing in the slot and are number ones are also being moved outside, and he did that a little bit at USC. He played inside and out, so there's. Potential, I guess, for that. But even if he just kind of takes over that slot role and is the long-term answer there, I think that's just, like I said, great value at a 4th-round draft pick.
Yeah, and if this guy isn't starting as one of the top 3 or 4 wide receivers, that's what I consider starting, then that's insane. Because they have nobody at wide receiver.
Yeah, I think his only competition will be Quintez Cephas as like a big slot role. But I don't necessarily think that Cephas I would be surprised if Cephas won that job because, I mean, big slots can be they can be valuable, but I think they're much better as kind of like a supplemental, like you have that as an option, but not necessarily like always have your slot guy be a slower possession type receiver.
And I'd also like to add that this guy's father was Mr. Universe, which is the most interesting fact I think of any of the Lions draft picks in like the last 5 years. But
I think more significantly, his brother is on the Packers as well. Equanimous St. Brown.
it's going to be fun to see these two teams go head to head. Hopefully Rodgers isn't playing. It's going to be Jordan Love.
All right, so that's Amon-Ra St. Brown. Great slot receiver. Could, excuse me, will likely have like a job as a starter on this team day one because of how weak this receiver room is. Which also kind of is, it's going to be hard to measure like how successful his training camp is because like if he gets a starting role, it's not going to be insanely impressive. You know what I mean? Like it's not like he has someone to beat out for it. Like you said, Quintus Cephas, I guess, is the one, but that's not really that much competition. But he's going to be an exciting player. You know, he's the only like he's the most exciting playmaker, the stereotypical playmaker, like the just the receiver, the running back. He's the most exciting we got out of in the draft. And finally, Jared Goff might have a little bit more cushion. Now it's not gonna necessarily save him from the lack of outside receivers, but it's just good to have another weapon. So after that, we have Derek Barnes, linebacker. Derek Barnes kind of reminds me of a Michigan State linebacker. He's just got like that old-fashioned body type where he's just like broad shoulders. Mm-hmm. You know, he's muscled up. He just squats in the backfield and just waits. He was a 3-year starter, which is pretty impressive. He has good experience. There's a reason he was this late. There's a reason he's a 4th rounder. It's because he's not necessarily special in any way, but he's a solid linebacker. He's projected a little bit higher than that, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that so his first 2 years in college, he was actually a D-end. He didn't even play off-ball linebacker his first 2 years, so he's literally been at the position for 1 year. So I think part of the reason he was picked here is, like we talked about, the high athletic profile. And he was very productive his first year as an off-ball linebacker, but he wasn't really asked to drop into coverage a whole lot. So that's gonna kind of be what we're watching for, is a guy who hasn't really played much coverage in his football career. Kind of see if he can adjust to that, like the zone coverages that middle linebackers and off-ball linebackers need to be, used to.
Yeah, I like the position that the Lions went here, linebacker. I wanted them to possibly draft 2 linebackers in this one, so I'm very happy they at least got one. They traded up for this pick, and when they did, I was almost certain that it was going to be Jabril Cox. Jabril Cox is still on the board, and I'm still a little muffled by the fact that they didn't get Jabril Cox. It still shocks me. It's like Jabril Cox, projected late 2nd round, falls to mid-4th. The Lions trade up, and they get this guy with a lack of experience. So Brad Holmes must really see something, because I don't know what they're doing.
Well, I was with you in a desire for Jabril Cox. I did think it would be fun to see him
Yes.
on this team, but I guess
It didn't muffle me as much as it did you, Paul. Muffled. I don't think that's the right usage.
But no, I think Jabril Cox and Derek Barnes do 2 different things, and they already kind of got a athletic coverage linebacker that the type that Jabril Cox would be in, Alex Anzalone, and he's not necessarily a long-term solution, but he's still he kind of fills the same role that a Jabril Cox would have, and whereas Derek Barnes is more of the like outside linebacker, kind of defend against the run and, hopefully develop some coverage skills, but just kind of play sideline to sideline, be athletic, and just use that to his advantage.
Yeah, so a guy that is not a lock to make the team, I wouldn't say. I think that's likely he does, but a guy who has a lot of upside. His ceiling isn't necessarily high, but the fact that he's newly a linebacker and he already had a productive year and he looks like he's solid. And again, he kind of possesses that ability to bull rush. He can kind of be that guy who has a chance to get in the backfield. So let's say they bring out more packages where the linebackers start blitzing, because we didn't see a lot of blitzing in Patricia, let alone linebackers blitzing. So it'd be interesting to see him in a position where he can thrive with that kind of situation.
Yeah, and I absolutely think we'll see some more of that with this new defense being installed. And I'm just so excited to see this new, more modern style defense that we just haven't really seen with the Quinn Tricia era. And I think Derek Barnes is, regardless of what you think about him as a prospect, he fits that kind of that mold, that athletic sideline to sideline type player. So I'm just, I'm excited that they are showing a commitment to getting these type of players and transforming this defense into what is better suited for the modern NFL.
Yeah, so that's Barnes right there. Let's move on to their last draft pick, Jamar Jefferson. You want to introduce us to Jamar, Paul?
This running back was projected in the 5th round. The Lions were able to swindle the Cleveland Browns out of their 7th round pick for a running back out of Oregon State. And he is going to complete this running back situation in Detroit. Now they have Jamal Williams, who I think is running back 1 in Detroit, not DeAndre Swift. But DeAndre Swift will be a solid running back 2. And you add Jamar Jefferson, a rookie who I think will get some playing time, unlike that 5th rounder or 6th rounder from New Mexico State last year, who they released. That was a horrible pick by the Quinn Tricia era. But now we see an amazing pick. I wish they got Shakir Brown out of MSU, the cornerback, but second best possible option there at 257.
I'm a hardcore Spartan fan, and I can't lie to myself and say they should have drafted Shakir Brown. Dude's 5'9" and is so slow.
There's a reason that he didn't
No,
get drafted,
no, he's got amazing fundamentals. Amazing fundamentals. Literally, that's all. He does not have any upside. He would be signed as maybe practice squad. He's and like I said, I love Shakir Brown. I think he's decent. I think for his size, he's the best you can get, and for his speed, he's the best you can get. But he's also so small and so slow. So there's that. That's the least dumb thing you said. But man, the disrespect to DeAndre Swift, dude. What did DeAndre Swift do to you?
Yeah, Paul, I really don't understand.
You are literally the only human on earth who thinks that Jamar Jefferson, the Oregon State running back, projected in the 5th round, is going to come in and just magically steal his start. No, he's not going to come in and take DeAndre Swift's start. You are genuinely insane if you think that.
Well, I didn't say that. I had him firmly behind Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift.
But still, I just don't
solid
understand
3.
why you don't think DeAndre Swift will be the starter when he's clearly shown in his. I mean, I guess I won't say he's clearly shown, but there's been a dedication to the run game and kind of just developing it around him.
They didn't have Jamal Williams before. This guy is a starting running back in the NFL. He just is sitting behind Aaron Jones.
Do you know what I forgot? Paul plays fantasy too much, and every
Yeah.
once in a while, I hate that so much.
Well, and
Paul.
that's the thing is, if Aaron Jones is sitting and Jamal Williams was in the lineup, Paul knew that he was good for a lot of fantasy points. So that's where these are.
Yep, this is not a well-informed football take. Let me tell you, folks, this is literally I am decent at beating people in fantasy. So let me tell you, the rest of us at Motown Megacast don't have holes in our brains, and we do believe that DeAndre Swift is a great running back. He's a great running back, and he will be QB, or he will be RB1. He's going to be the starting running back. They've said as much. They build it around him. Like you said, they almost seem to scheme the running game around him last year.
Right,
they saw potential in these guys. Like
and I think
it's
this
not
new
going to just be
system-
replaced immediately.
Yeah, this new system will be no different. But I do think, I guess to talk about Jamar Jefferson as a player.
Poor Jamar.
Well, I think it's interesting, and I wonder if them picking him there was kind of tipping their cap that the news came out recently that Kerryon Johnson was waived. So, right away he has a pretty clear path to the roster as the running back 3. So, I think that'll be interesting to watch. I mean, if you can get a contributor in the 7th round, that's obviously
what you're looking.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, I think running backs, that type of position is a little bit easier to find value like that, but value in the 7th round, regardless, is
That's impressive. Yeah, because 7th round, a lot of the times it's just kind of like you're looking for that guy to come in.
you're just calling
Practice squad.
You're calling dibs on UDFA's
Yep.
pretty much.
Yep, essentially. And the fact that Jamar Jefferson was projected in the 5th round, that's another reason Paul really liked Jamar Jefferson, is because he kept going like relatively early in the draft game he played all the time. So he's got a little bit more love for him. So that explains that. But yeah, I mean, like you said, if the fact that he can come in here and be productive, it's never a bad thing. That's never a bad thing.
And he's not really. I think he's actually tested rather poorly as a running back, but I think his play style, he's kind of like a one-cut running back, like just kind of get downhill fast and make the right reads, and I don't know, and just kind of be this all around. Like he's not crazy athletic, and he's not like Derrick Henry type of run you over, but he's gonna hit holes hard, and he's gonna just kind of churn out yards, and I think there's definitely going to be a role for him on this team, and I'm excited to see how he'll be able to fill it.
Yeah, so those are your Lions draft picks. Let's get right into the roundtable here. Draft superlatives. Great idea, Ryan, by the way. I love it. I love superlatives so much. They're so fun. So let's just start off with a fun one then. Lions roundtable draft superlatives. Who has the best name? I feel like Paul's going to have fun with this, so let me hand it to Paul.
Oh, I wish you didn't give it to me first. I just can't pronounce them. I like that corner out of Syracuse.
Well, you gotta at least try to say his name.
Can you give me the first letter?
Here, yeah. Read Alex's screen.
Oh, Melifano.
No, what's the first name?
Afatu Melifano.
You're pretty close. Okay, Paul's pick is Afatu Melifonwu.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm gonna pick the obvious one right here. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown. You don't be the sun god. You are not named after the sun god for nothing. That is the best name. Amon-Ra St. Brown. That is the coolest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, I'm kind of gonna go like honorable mention, like not necessarily. You're just kind of one that I think is underrated, I'll say, and that's Jamar Jefferson.
That is a good name, JJ.
I think it's especially a good sounding running back name. I can't.
Jamar Jefferson.
But Jamar Jefferson sounds like a running back's name.
It is such a Jefferson rushes to that just you can just hear like the sports talk.
And the alliteration for a running back is always
J
like Josh Jacobs.
God, I didn't think of that aspect, dude. Oh my God. See,
that's my underrated name.
I like it. The dark horse.
Yeah,
pick
because
for
I
best
mean,
name.
best name is kind of objectively Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah.
But
as much as I loved hearing Paul try to pronounce it, I will say the thing is Paul started really nice there, like the Ifatu, and then Milifon he kind of trailed off there, tried to hide that he didn't know how to say the end. But I appreciate it. So now a little bit more serious here. Highest ceiling. Do you want to go ahead and go first, Paul? Who has the highest ceiling out of all of them?
Jamar Jefferson. This guy could be a starter in the NFL easily. I'm not easy. I don't think he's going to be the Lions' RB1, at least not for a couple years. But it's possible. like in 2 or 3 years that this guy is the Lions' main guy. I don't know how long they're going to have Jamal Williams, and if I'm right, I don't really think DeAndre Swift will be with the team for too long. I think he'll be like a upgraded carry-on, but I love this pick so much.
Well, your logic was simply ludicrous. I'm glad you picked Jamar Jefferson just as, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because that's not...
It's not right. It's objectively not right, so I love it. I mean, man, I hate to do it. I can't not pick Penei Sewell. This dude has the ability to literally be a Pro Bowl until he retires. Like, I don't want to overhype this, but this genuinely could be like a franchise left tackle. I can't not pick him.
Yeah, I'm tempted to say the same, but I guess I'll go with Onwuzurike.
Yeah, that's close.
I just feel like
I think if you have a true like penetrating pass rushing interior defensive lineman, I think those are rare enough that they're kind of invaluable. You know, like obviously he's a special case, but you look at the impact a guy like Aaron Donald has on a team, or like to a lesser degree, you know, guys like I guess, or in the past like a Gerald McCoy or a Sue one in his heyday, and even now he's still a disruptor, but like you saw the value of a guy like that, like. I think if he can even have like I don't know any semblance of like the Aaron Donald type impact or role, I should say, maybe not
role.
impact.
Yeah, I think role is the better term. See, I see right where you're coming from though. The ceiling on this guy is also massive to me.
And it's really hard to pick one because this class is just the athletic profile is so much. Just better,
and that's what you've taken into consideration when you take in ceiling. It's usually guys who have like the intangibles or just the athletic strength to put it together. That's half the draft class.
Oh yeah, but I think the first 3 picks could all be argued as having potentially just crazy impact and very high ceiling.
Paul, I can't believe Paul picked Jamar Jefferson. It's like the literal last one I would have picked. I guess Derek Barnes. He does. I don't think Barnes has a high ceiling, but Jamar Jefferson, Paul. Oh my god.
But at least Derek Barnes has an athletic profile to back him.
That
is not something Jamar Jefferson has.
Keep in mind, when I'm talking about high ceilings, I'm going them like based off of where they got drafted.
Well.
You're trying to retroactively fix what you said, and I respect that you're still standing by it. You know you're wrong, and you know that you know you're wrong. But let's move on to the biggest bust potential.
Oh boy.
Who can just fall apart? Important to note, based on their draft position, according to Paul. I'm gonna go Onwuzurike.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, I was gonna go the same. I think he could also, just because you have to pick somebody here.
Yeah,
I mean, you could pick a guy like Jamar Jefferson, but I don't think
it's considered.
I don't think the impact of him doing bad would just it would be a lot different than.
And that's not something you could use to argue against Holmes down the road. You're not gonna argue that his 7th round running back didn't hit. You're gonna argue that his 2nd round. What people may not have thought was the best decision, and you're going to argue that against
especially them. Considering just the dreadful 2nd round, some of them that went ahead with Tabor and Tavai and I mean even Kerryon Johnson, as much as you hate to say it, and he had some good moments,
that makes me so sad.
He was a 2nd round pick in 2018, and now
I have a football card of him, and it's so cool. It has like a piece of his jersey, a piece of his football. Stuff like that. It's numbered out of 25. It's 1 of 25.
He just seemed like such a down-to-earth guy.
He's so fun. I follow him on Twitter.
Yeah, but he's such a good Twitter
He's
follow.
just chill, dude. I miss him. But I agree. I think it owns Onwuzurike just because when you rely on athletic profile as well, it sucks because you can't predict it, but injuries. One injury derails it. You know what I mean? It can derail it.
Right.
I think the biggest bust is going to be Derek Barnes. I don't think he's going to be with the team in a couple of years. And that happens with a lot of draft picks. A lot of people don't talk about how the average NFL career is like 2-3 years. And I think he's going to be one of those guys. I think the Lions will rue the day that they traded up and didn't take Jabril Cox.
Yeah, they're going to rue the day they didn't get a backup safety, and instead they got a guy who was in and out of the NFL away in the 5th round or whatever he was. Was it 4th round? What was Derek Barnes? 4th. Yeah, that's going to be, you're right, Paul. That's the biggest bust is the 4th round linebacker. You got me. God, I can't. Paul is devolving, I think. He has returned to monkey.
When you're talking about busts, okay, where they got drafted does matter. If Mitch Trubisky got drafted in the 5th round, people wouldn't consider him a bust, but he got drafted in the top 5.
Bro, you're literally making an argument against yourself right now. Derek Barnes is like, wouldn't be considered a bust because he's a 4th round pick.
Yes, but you also have to take in context that the Lions traded up, drafted a linebacker, and a linebacker that was supposed to be picked a lot higher, Jabril Cox, is going to be good,
but
and
Paul,
the Lions are going to regret not having him.
You can't make a definitive statement like that based on mock drafts. Like, just because in the mock drafts he went in the 3rd round doesn't mean that every team had him. Like, obviously, as with everybody, there's a reason they fall.
Yes, but also in your 4th round pick, especially an early 4th round pick that you traded up to get, let's keep that in mind. You expect this guy to at least play some role at some point, and my prediction is that he's going to be that guy that doesn't.
Just because you talk more doesn't mean you make a good point. You blabbered on a lot about just absolute garbage, and I want to call you out for it. You're making weird choices and you're defending him, and I love it, Paul, and that's why you're such an asset to the show, is because I love hearing you just dig the deepest hole for yourself and somehow try and dig yourself out. And if you were in a room with just casual football fans, you would do it because you do a great job of it. It's just the thing is, it's just not solid what you're saying. I mean, you're saying he's a big bust, and I think he has honestly the lowest ceiling or the lowest floor out of a lot of these guys. Like, I don't know. He's just he's a well-rounded guy who is expected to be like not a practice squad, but maybe a decent backup. So, anyways, that's a lot of arguing for just biggest bust potential. Let's go most athletic. This is a fun one. This one's kind of hard.
Yeah, and so I think like most athletic relative to their position.
Yes,
probably.
yes.
Okay, I'll take this one first. I'm actually gonna go with Melifonwu. This guy, he had crazy explosion numbers. I think he jumped like almost a 42-inch vertical or something. And he, if you look at like the RAS scores, I think it was either him or Sewell that had the top in the draft class. But yeah, he just combines like size and length with explosion, and I think that will kind of be like what he hangs his hat on in the NFL, is his athleticism and his ability to like fly around and get into the right spots. So I'll go with Melifonwu for this one.
So it's been a consistency with me tonight, but I'm gonna go Penei Sewell here. Just speed and strength. The 2 S's with athleticism. He's speedy. He's so fast for how big he is. I mean, like I said, you watch the tape of this guy. It's interesting to see him. He doesn't necessarily fly around like a Melifonwu does, but he does have. For his size, he has speed. He's so strong. He wins against almost any competition he has. I have to make him most athletic, but I definitely see Melifonwu. That makes sense to me.
I'm going to continue my trend of unpredictability tonight, and I'm going to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Because this guy's ability to escape the first tackle and get those extra yards, that's not something you see every day. It's just quickness. It's not speed. It's not raw speed, but quickness that he has that lack in some of these other players. And so I love it.
Amon-Ra. Amon-Ra. Oh my God! I can't even argue with you with that, Paul. Amon-Ra. So Paul's most athletic is Amon-Ra.
Yeah. Interesting argument.
Yeah. Especially since we're considering position compared to other wide receivers.
Dude literally had like a slope 40 kind of.
Dude, yeah.
Like it.
I will say I agree. His name is great. Amanai is just a great name. But to each their own. So what is the best value pick here? Let's go to Paul first because Paul's obsessed with like value in the pick because of that draft game. So go ahead and kick it off, Paul.
I'm actually going to go with Aleem McNeil as much as I want to go with Jamar Jefferson here. He should have gotten drafted a lot sooner. He's a DB, which the Lions desperately needed. And that's basically it. Why not?
So with this one's hard for me as well because it's kind of like we were talking, like most athletic is most of the class. I think most of this class is pretty value. Mm-hmm. I mean, these are pretty valuable picks. God, see, I hate thinking about saying Penei Sewell again, but like, I think he was the best in terms of his position other than Trevor Lawrence this year. So like, in a vacuum, the second best prospect in the draft, and the fact that the Bengals, for some screw all reason, passed on him, and the Dolphins don't get enough hate for passing on him. The Dolphins' offensive line is not that good. If you look at them, they're statistically, according to Pro Football Focus, they are a worse offensive line than the Bengals. They could have used a guy like that. I
guess I think while that is probably true, I think they were at least more equipped to take a skill position player than the Bengals. Like, I think it's really...
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
I think the Dolphins made a worse decision than Cincinnati, mainly because Cincinnati had Jamar Chase available. Miami didn't. They went with Jalen Waddle, who is a good wide receiver, is likely going to complement Devontae Parker. But this was pointless. They should have gone with Penei or traded down if it was available.
No, I completely disagree. Justin Jefferson was like that. I think the Bengals passing on him is way worse. I get what your argument is making because like Justin Jefferson, I think is not a lot better, but like is definitely better than Jalen Waddle. But they were in such a better position to draft like that. The Dolphins were. That is to say, the Dolphins were in the position to pick like a skill position player. And the Bengals are not. The Bengals need some of those foundational players. So, hey, if it falls to the Lions, I'll take it. But, again, though, with the second round, Onwuzurike, he's arguably the best defensive tackle in the class. There was also Barrymore. Barrymore. He was kind of the guy who was the number one D tackle, but I think there could have been a case made for him. I'm just going to go Penei Sewell. I'm going to go with my favorite guy in the draft. I'm going to go stereotypical. Penei Sewell, chalk.
Yeah. I think I'm going to go with kind of a similar theme. I'm going to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown here. Because like I brought it up earlier, but if he can truly just come in and like lock down that slot receiver role, then that's just awesome value at fourth round. And I think I'm really excited to see him because I think he has that skill set available to kind of just come in and like lock that down right away. So if they do in fact get one of the mainstays for this offense in the fourth round, I think that value is basically unbeatable.
All right, and let's go with our least favorite and favorite draft picks. I'm gonna say Paul for last year because I know his is gonna be good. He's gonna say some wild garbage. And when we say least favorite, we're not talking about like we condemn these players. I think I speak for all of us when I say we love these players already, even though they're not in the Honolulu Blue yet. We love them. It's just in terms of like value, in terms of what they did, in terms of needs, just a guy that we could have seen better. And for that, I'll go ahead and start off. I agree with Paul. I don't know about trading up for Derek Barnes. He's got a decent athletic profile, but I don't know about giving up assets to, I don't know. To me, just let someone fall. You've done it already in the draft. Just let someone fall to you. I don't necessarily love trading up. I like Derek Barnes, but if I have to pick one, I'll go Derek Barnes.
Yeah, I can definitely see that point where I was
kind of tempted to go with him because of the fact that they traded up to get him.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go a slightly different direction. I'm going to say Onwuzurike. The only reason I'm saying that is because kind of like when considering value, I just like the only reason for this pick is because I would have rather had Morig or Merrick as the pick.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's kind of hard in a draft class like this to really have like one draft pick that you're not really like intrigued about. Like, so for that reason only, but don't get me wrong, I'm still very excited for Onwuzurike.
And then real quick before we hand it to Paul, so we can give both of us or both of it at the same time. My favorite, I'm gonna say Penei Sewell. I can't say anyone but Penei Sewell. I am in love with this man. He's so beautiful. I say his name for fun sometimes. I was at my girlfriend's house and I'll just like say to myself Penei Sewell. It's I don't know what's going on with it, but I just think about him too much. So Penei Sewell's my favorite. I love him.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna ride it out with Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of, I was really excited to see how they would address receiver, and I think they kind of, I like the way Brad Holmes went about it, where, you know, if they get him and like let's say one of Perryman or Tyrell Williams pans out, and then you get, you know, like let's say a receiver with your second first round pick next year, then that might be your receiving room. Like you might be able to build from there. So I think.
No, I really like the St. Brown pick. You know, I didn't want the Lions to draft a wide receiver too early. I wanted them to get a wide receiver later in the draft if they were going to get one, and that was to me the perfect person and place to get a receiver. For my least favorite pick, I'm going to have to go with Aleem McNeil. However, I do completely agree with Ryan and Alex on their picks. Barnes and Washington D tackle.
Say it.
Anu was Ukari. I can't say it if I haven't heard it.
One more time.
Somebody else say it first so I can try to mimic them.
Onwuzurike. So is that your pick?
No, I'm going with Aleem McNeil.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't understand picking 2 D tackles. I understand they're going long term. I understand they're going big guys in value, but I didn't think this was necessary. D tackle wasn't on the list of team needs, and they went ahead and got 2 of them within the first 2 days before getting any of the team needs. I thought that was insane. Hopefully it pans out, though, you know. And then my favorite pick is Jamar Jefferson. I mean, this was probably the second best value in the draft behind cornerback from Syracuse that I can't pronounce. I'm going to attempt to pronounce it here. Oh.
Do you want me to say it first?
No.
Okay, all right, go for it.
Afidu Batifano. Yeah, whatever his name is, I'm just going to call him the cornerback from Syracuse for right now. But Jamar Jefferson, he fits well in that RB3 category, soon to be potentially RB2 if Swift or Jamal Williams don't pan out. I think Williams definitely will, though. And he's from Oregon State, and as much as I like the Dogs, the Beavers are hilarious too. Like up in Cervalis, I just find it hilarious that he came from Oregon State, to be honest.
That's the most Paul answer I've ever heard in my entire life. I like the 7th round running back, and I think he can replace our RB1.
I think the third string running back is going to be more impactful than their starting right tackle.
Oh, well, I think that just about does it for the episode. Thanks for listening in. Next week, we'll take it back to like a bit more normal. Recently, the Red Wings season ended. We can talk about that. We can talk about end of season stuff there. Pistons are coming to an end. We'll talk about that. And then the Tigers are the worst thing happening to Detroit right now. So there's that. Well, thanks for listening. Tune in next week. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at @MMegacast. We update everything there, essentially. New articles even written by Paul Cassell himself. So, yeah, check it out. Thanks for listening.